Oh, I gotta fix this shit. Fix this shit, Holly. Ooh, I gotta. Whoa! Ah!
Wow.
Yeah, I always forget to do that when I bring my boom arm down. The springs on it are horrible. All right, let's post the link.
Mm-hmm.
The link to the show.
All right.
These things I do. I was too busy talking to you, so I didn't do these things before. Holly.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You know how it works out.
It all works. Agreed. It does all work out.
In the wash. We are live. Did I get it right? Curses and ancestry?
Curses, ancestral wounds, and I think we'll throw in some talk about epigenetics in there. And this may seem like three really different things, but I hope to pull the three threads together by the end of the show.
Okay.
So
why? I'm having an issue with one of my apps. Not app. Well, I guess it's an app. Everything's an app, isn't it? Application.
Could be. I don't know any of the tech stuff. I'm the whimsical end of things over here.
the whimsical.
Yeah. I let you be the tech expert, and I'm the whimsical expert.
Yeah. All right. So I got my Earl Grey tea, Holly.
Oh, I have been drinking Earl Grey tea a lot lately.
It's so good.
It is so good. My sister gave me a 3-month tea subscription for Christmas, and you get like a box of mixed tea every month. It's really fun.
Nice.
Yeah. And it came with actually a lot of chai tea, which I like as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been having this morning.
Nice.
Some chai tea.
Yeah. I used to drink a lot of tea with my grandmother when I was younger.
Yeah.
And one of my aunts and I used to play cribbage and drink tea, and that was just regular old, Salada or red rose tea, which is just a black tea. But I've really, really grown accustomed to drinking the Earl Grey. It tastes so good. I like it.
Do you drink it straight, or you put a little milk in it?
Little milk, a little bit of honey, and a little bit of sugar.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, I've tried it with like cream or creamer, and it doesn't taste as good to me. I like it with milk.
I agree. Yeah, you got to go with the milk.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna get us officially started here, Holly.
Are you gonna play the intro music?
Yeah, you're not like officially started until you play the music, are you? I don't think so.
I think you're right.
I think it begs the question of, when does the show start? Does it start before the show, or is it now?
I think we're always in the now.
I think the show is always technically kind of going, and then it just goes live. Yeah, so we will be talking about curses. What'd you say? Ancestral? I thought it was like ancestry, like your ancestral.
Right. So your ancestral stuff, but when I wanted to tie it together with curses, so I kind of like, when I wrote out some thoughts, I kind of titled it "Curses, Ancestral Wounds, and Epigenetics." So curses, let's just talk about that. Those are basically bad intentions that you usually direct towards someone else, a person, place, or thing, or it could be directed towards yourself. You can self-curse. Ancestral wounds are kind of those pain points that are carried through the generations and can be curse related. And how this ties to epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of DNA through the generations and how they find that trauma or times of trauma can switch genes on and off.
Mm-hmm.
So you could say that a quote unquote cursed time frame can change the genetics of a population, and that would be the epigenetics. And they are finding that happening in populations that have been, say, like in World War II, and people who went through a lot of famine or strife, or populations that were put in concentration camps, like the Jewish people. They also put people with significant disabilities. That stress of that experience actually changed those people's DNAs, and it has been carried forward in their children of the survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And that they can detect those changes when they do genetic studies. And so it kind of speaks to how a kind of like a cursed experience, or this kind of negative experience, can affect you on a genetic level. And how oftentimes we have talked about, families being cursed for 7 generations. And so is this replication of this kind of bad energy through several generations of a family. But that we have to have that understanding of what a curse is, what this negative energy, and kind of talk about that. And is that a thing or not a thing? And is it, and so that's kind of where is my starting point. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing is that right now we are just post eclipse, and in kind of like magical lore, eclipse periods can be these times of breaking curses, because you're changing the energy, or you're switching over from one energy pattern to another energy pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I'll tie in the eclipse. We just had a lunar eclipse yesterday. In the Eastern Standard Time, it was like 2:30 in the afternoon. So it's not been quite 24 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
it's in the that is when there is a full moon. So yesterday was a full moon. The moon is still it's starting to wane, but it's still considered full right now for a number of hours. And full moons are times when the sun and the moon are opposite each other, so you see the fullness of the moon. And it's considered can be seen metaphorically, symbolically, as a time when you bring light onto something in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
It can illuminate things. And an eclipse is when they are at certain points at the axes, and it can be seen as a time to change energies. So the eclipse that just happened was astrologically on the Cancer Capricorn axis. Those two zodiacal signs are opposite each other. And so the moon was in Cancer. The sun right now is still in Capricorn, and is balancing those energies and changing those patterns, which has to do with emotional and physical security. And these are places where people can feel cursed. It's, one of those historical curses, like way back in biblical times, are some of the most famous curses. Right back to the Garden of Eden. What happens? God's playing in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve and says, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then what happens? He leaves, and they're still playing in the Garden of Eden. There's a serpent. The serpent says, hey, Eve, you're not going to die if you eat this, but you're going to know about good and evil. Have some. And so she has some fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And she tastes it, and it tastes fine. She's not getting, she's not dying. She lives. She gives some to Adam. He's fine. God comes back and says, hey, guys, what you doing? And they said, oh, don't look at us. We're naked. And all of a sudden they have this awakening that what nakedness is, more of who they are. And God is mad. God curses the serpent. He said, you will be the lowest of the animals. We're going to step on you. You are going to be the hated one. You're going to be chased and eat the dust of the ground. He essentially is an energetic punishment for the serpent. who becomes a symbol of evil, but is also somewhat a serpent of a symbol of the rising knowledge in other cultures.
Oh yeah,
And then
like
he
the
goes.
Caduceus wand.
Yes. Yeah. You see the serpent on the headdresses of the ancient Egyptians. The serpent is also important in Mesoamerican religious cultures, like the winged serpent, as a symbol of knowledge. But he curses women. He says, "You are going to have labor pains and agony when you bear children." And he curses Adam for listening to his wife and also eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. It says, "You are gonna, you are in itself are not cursed, but I am cursing the earth so that you now have to toil in order to survive."
Seems
So
like you get the less of the bullshit. Seems to me like God's wrath was directed in one place. Curse your womb.
Yes. But these are like three, these are the curses, intentions of pain as punishment. So it's kind of like the opposite of a blessing, where you're wishing some good things to happen to someone. A curse is having an intention to do harm, to wound, to have some kind of negative effect on a person, place, or thing. So you can curse the ground, you can curse your neighbor if you're upset with them. Some of European curses where they would say witches would curse cows so that they would go dry and the town wouldn't have milk.
We've all cursed shit.
And then just simple swear words. When you're mad and
That's the power of cursing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I do a lot of that.
Is that your superpower, cursing?
Fucking not curse constantly. Watch the fuck out.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think.
So I just hit you with a lot because we didn't really talk about the topic before the show today, but
no, and a lot of times that's good.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to like curses and directing that type of energy, I don't. I know that there's a lot of belief in it. Voodoo dolls are a prime example of a curse or a type of curse.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all kinds of different things, and there have been many examples throughout, I would say, mythological history.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. But to say that like a curse is like a factual thing, I just think we're at a time, scientifically, logically, where we can understand like the intention of a curse, but whether or not they happen in these outrageous and magnificent ways, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's more a lot of the stuff that we hear about, it's stories. They're kind of fables to teach lessons.
Mm-hmm.
If you do these bad things, then bad things will happen to you. It was a keep the people in line shit. I think.
Right. So I think it comes along the lines of how much power do we give the mind and give our intention, and the power of belief systems. So if you're willing to believe that someone's negative thoughts can affect you, you're kind of allowing that to affect you.
I think that people do that. I think that people let other people's energies affect them. And I think that happens just emotionally. I mean, forget about curses. I think, emotionally, like if someone else is angry with you or has some type of aggressive nature towards you, body language wise or whatever, you're going to feel it, and if you allow it to in some way affect you, then you're succumbing to that quote unquote curse. I think that that's something that we do day in and day out as human beings.
Right. And so I think if we propagate the idea that we are, if you say your family, you have a belief in your family that, oh, you're cursed. There's been talk of like the daughter curse. At some points in times, having sons was considered more valuable than having daughters. And families that would only have daughters would be considered cursed because they were not having the more favored gender. And, and sometimes if you believe that, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Which is what a lot of it is, I think. In a lot of cases, it's a lot of the stuff is just self-fulfilling.
And I've wondered about that with, like, for many years. One of the things that we talked about, we live in New England. The major baseball team is the Red Sox. They had often kind of projected the curse of the Bambino, which is Babe Ruth had was originally a Red Sox pitcher. He later went on to, I think, to the New York Yankees. There was some kind of perceived ill treatment from kind of the Red Sox management, and then he subsequently cursed them somehow so that they would never like win a World Series for something like 80 years. And I can remember when they finally won a World Series, it was like, oh, we've broken the curse of the Bambino.
Yeah, it was a huge thing in New England.
Yeah.
I remember I actually watched that World Series, and I was a baseball fan when I was a kid, and I fell out when they went on strike in the 90s, and I watched that World Series simply because my grandfather was such a huge Red Sox fan, and he died before he never got to see them win in his lifetime. So I wound up watching it kind of like in his honor, so to speak. But it was one of those things that was on, and I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'm gonna sit down and watch it. I didn't watch the whole series. I only watched like the last few games, but yeah, it was definitely a huge thing up here, and everybody believed in it. I've talked about on my channel on the channel before, the growing up in Buxton, the curse on the Saco, or the curse of the Saco River, that supposedly some Indian chief had put a curse on the Saco River that it would take like 3 white people every year or some shit like that. And that was perpetuated all over when I was growing up. Every time people would die in the Saco River, they'd be like, "Oh, that's the first one of the year." It's like, Jesus fucking. I mean,
yeah,
people are gonna die in rivers. It happens.
So, and I think sometimes because when we continue to give it energy, it kind of self-perpetuates a little bit.
Right.
And,
Again, like you were saying, it was a self-fulfilling curse because you were pretty much guaranteed you were going to have a handful of people die on that river every year. Just by the sheer number of people on it. And fishing, swimming. We used to jump in the damn thing as kids. We used to jump off the bridges. So, I mean, it was bound to happen. It was a self-fulfilling curse. I thought it was funny, though, growing up, because my family was always like, oh, we don't have to worry because we have Indian blood. And then fucking my father had a genetics test. Come to find out, they got fucking 0.
That is a big, like, North American myth that if you have some kind of French Canadian ancestry, that you have, it's like it automatically means that you have Native American blood, and that is not true. They are not finding that to be true.
No, with my family, it was something completely different. They had a totally different backstory.
Oh, they did. I thought you were.
Like the backstory was that there were 2 brothers and that they were train robbers, and like, so I don't believe any of the fucking story anymore. And that they escaped to Maine so that they could avoid prosecution, and that they had a penchant for breaking the law, and back then having, relations with Native Americans was against the law, and they did, and that's why we had it in our lineage. And come to find out, the whole fucking story was a bag of shit. Like, so I don't even know like how much of the story is true.
Right.
But
If any of it at all.
Right. But this goes to like that whole ancestry thing. Like, this was
Yeah.
something that my family perpetuated for years, to the
Yes.
point where when it was brought up that, hey, no, we don't have any of this genetics in our line, people got angry and said, no, that's wrong.
Oh, they didn't believe the data.
Yeah. So I just find it, at this point, I find it funny. It's kind of hilarious that you can live in this family and be brought up under this belief that's totally, totally wrong, but completely believe in it.
Yep.
And then, later on have it shattered, but still hold. I was just like, whatever.
Yeah. So, ancestry stuff, you get your family mythology, which sometimes has been, um, it's kind of like with the victor takes the history, like when you see countries that conquer other countries, and then the winner's story is what becomes the history, and you kind of see that in family. Well, one of the things in my family was that there was this big tale that part of the family came from Ireland, and it was published in genealogical books, and then it's kind of the similar thing. They did the genetic testing, and one there's no um there's no genetic indication that they were Irish, and then also there's really no actual like birth records or real family history, like the documents that you would look like that would support that branch of the family came to Ireland either.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, where did this story come from?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that baffles me is that, you grow up with these ideas of where you came from, and a lot of times, though, even those stories are bullshit. Like, what it gets to the point where what is truth? I think we are who we are ultimately. Does our ancestry like have something to do with us? Oh yeah, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. and do pains and things from our past and from humanity's past still plague people to this day genetically? Fuck yeah. Statistically speaking, most master bedrooms are on the second floor. Most bedrooms are on the second floor. And the reason is because we still have fucking monkey brains that want to hide in the trees from the goddamn cats. I mean, I mean, I'm not like, I don't know. When my ex-wife was building a fucking house, she was like, I need the fucking bedroom on the second floor. And I'm like, what the fuck does it matter? And it was at that time, like, I was listening to a lot of Joe Rogan, and Rogan was the one that brought it up, like that it's a thing that people still do, to this day.
Yeah.
It's because we're trying to stay up and away from the evil predators on the ground, that are out to get us. But it's something that we hold on to, and you could say, in essence, that it's kind of a quote unquote curse, genetically.
Well, it's a genetic. If it's undesirable, we tend to label it as a curse.
Yeah.
Right.
But
it's the same thing of any kind of genetic deformity or difference. It may not even necessarily be a bad, but
it's a defense mechanism, is what it is.
Yeah.
It's a genetic defense mechanism, and a lot of animals have those too.
To get up into the trees.
Yeah, or there's all kinds of different mechanisms that they have that they just learn instinctively.
Well, and it's that kind of another part of it is that in kind of instinctive genetic thing to shun things that are different.
Oh yeah.
And to shame, to be wary of someone who looks different.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that
it's
humanity has to stamp out is the idiocy that comes from tribalism.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be like really fucking looked at and studied because it causes such ignorance. I was just talking about this with somebody recently. I want to say it was on the 40 slip. It's how fucking lynch mobs get started.
Mm-hmm.
Is that tribal nature of people where a few people start doing something and then other people join in, and before you know it, like everybody's fucking going, and it's crazy and it's mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a thing that people do, and you can say all day long, well, not me, maybe not you, but it's a thing that people do, and it's documented. It's happened many, many times. Riots, fucking, people just going fucking nuts, and like fucking, there have been cases where whole entire towns have lynched a person because that person was a bad person. Now, and the people will say, well, yeah, he was a bad person, but should they have done it?
Mm-hmm.
That's and like I said, that tribal nature, it's something that I think we really need to look at as a society, like what it is that causes us to do this, and maybe try to curtail it. Because there are positive points to tribalism. Don't get me wrong in saying that, but there's a lot of negative that comes with it too.
Well, and I think how sometimes things happen, and we have to think about how how long does a population or a tribe carry that wounding along to kind of, you know, and how is that incorporated into the identity, but how many generations later, when you are removed from the event, do you still hold that in your identity? So let's talk about like the Salem witch trials, right? That was a very um traumatic event. um you know many women and a man were hung as perceived witches. I kind of feel that wounding as someone who has some pagan leanings, but it's now been for like 4 centuries.
Yeah.
And I actually do have an ancestor who was one of the witches who was executed. But so how long do you hold that as part of your identity as being an ancestor of that tribe or that group?
I think the question that people have to ask themselves is, do they want to define themselves by the people that have come before them or as themselves? And I think a lot of people define themselves by the past. You have so many situations of young boys living up to their fathers, or some uh, uh, paternal figure, male figure in their life if they don't have a father or whatever. And the same thing with daughters and their mothers or whatever they perceive to be. So I think it's just something that we do. Does that make sense?
Well, I think it's hard to create something when you don't have a template. So we look back to our parents and our ancestry for the template often, whether it's personal or impersonal. And we kind of go from there.
Yeah,
because it's hard to rebuild all kinds of things from scratch.
Well, then you get a lot of people who are like, well, my grandfather was was a police officer, and my father was a police officer, and I'm a police officer. Or people who are in the military, same idea. You get people who do that same type of thing, or doctor, whatever the case may be. You have that type of shit that happens too. People identify by what came before them.
Right, so they kind of create something of an energy pattern or a patterning. But I think it's always important to kind of self-examine if that pattern is truly right for you. I mean, if you come from a family of farmers like I do, but farming just isn't really what's right for you, maybe you're not really setting yourself up for success if you try to be a farmer when you
Right.
are meant to be a doctor.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to look at that and examine why that's important, and perhaps feel a lot of pressure by your tribe or your family to not, continue to be, in my case, a farmer, and pursue, something different, and be willing to strike out on your own. And there may be family legends on why other paths had failed, and you know, what's going on with that, or how much pressure there is to conform to a certain way of being. And that can be very difficult because we want change is hard, and it's not always accepted.
No, a lot of times it's easy to just go with what was before, and I'm sure that's what it is for a lot of people. Hey, and dad had the farm. I'm just gonna be a fucking farmer like dad, or you know, uh, mom did this, so I'm just gonna go do what mom did, whatever the case may be. And I think sometimes that's a trap for people. Other times it's right where they should be. And sometimes that works. But there are some people that just, like me. Growing up, I was not anything like any of the other people in my family. I was, I just was different. I didn't like to look at cars. I didn't like to talk about war. I didn't like to hunt. I just didn't fit in that way.
Yeah.
So for me, it was not viable to follow that route. And I tried to, unfortunately, in some ways. Like I wound up falling into those little ruts and being miserable, being completely fucking miserable, following that same the rut in the fucking road that was laid before me, doing the same exact fucking work that my father had done, and hating myself for it. But you live and you learn. My big thing is hopefully that I can, at this point, pass on to my kids, hey, you don't have to do what you want to do. Be who you want to be. I mean, yeah, I came before you, but be you. Do you.
Right. Embrace being the black sheep.
Yeah, well, just
not even
embrace
that, but
being who you are.
yeah. Well, and I bring that up because that was in my family, a kind of a wounding that in my father's family he kind of had heard and he had held on to a bit.
I'm gonna tell a story tomorrow night. I'm not gonna let it out now. I'll tease it. There's a story.
Ooh, a little teasing this
Yeah,
morning.
I reached out. I have a friend who had a bit of a breakdown, and I was there for said friend, and I had said to him, I'm like, just be you. Own who you are. Don't be afraid of who you are. Don't be humiliated by who you are. Y- Understand it. It is what it is. And he at first he was like, dude, don't tell that story on the show.
Well, it's hard though, like when there are certain societal norms that say you're supposed to be a certain way and you don't fit in, and you kind of feel like to have that black sheep feeling when everyone else is the white sheep and you stick out like a sore thumb and you just want to fit in and feel some kind of sense of I belong.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. And when you feel like you're outside of that and that your issues are causing that to be worse, then yeah, absolutely. It just it isolates you. You know, it puts you on this little island all into your own. And that's horrible for people that have to go through that.
Right. In my family, some of that was due to mental health issues through the generations, which are in part genetic.
Yep.
You know, my grandfather was institutionalized. Another great grandfather had some real significant mental health issues, and it because there was such a stigma around mental health issues, my family became to feel so alienated from the community. They got this mentality that we are the black sheep. We can't really belong. We have to be out on our own, and that really needs to change. And it is changing with a greater acceptance and understanding of mental health issues. But there's a lot more work to be done.
Oh, yeah. And I think one of the biggest problems is that we don't have the facilities anymore. You know, I mean, I think we have a good amount of mental health awareness, but I don't think we have the facilities and the infrastructure to back up what we need to take care of it.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem right now. But, you know, that's my opinion. We welcome yours.
Yeah. It's also the same if you maybe perceive that you look a lot different. And
you mean physically?
Physically, yeah. And sometimes there's a slur or something that develops around that, and
well, people who have impediments, speech impediments or whatever, it makes it difficult for them to feel comfortable communicating with other people. I've known quite a few people in my life with speech impediments.
Yeah. Yep. And sometimes you can become, if you have that thing that you feel extremely self-conscious about, excuse me, it can be very hard to like even get beyond that and to start getting back normalized into society, because you can be so self-conscious and it can,
oh yeah,
it's like at the forefront of your existence.
I've had entire portions of my life where I just was day in, day out, just reliving whole portions of my life over and over in my fucking head, just torturing myself.
Right.
I mean, it's the shit we do. Like I can remember, like when I lost my job, I didn't lose my job. When I quit my job at Frito-Lay, when I was working at Frito-Lay, one of the better jobs I ever had as far as money wise. Like I made such great fucking money there. And when I quit my job there and I'd done what I did when I decided to get sober, and I'd made that decision because I had decided that being out in that truck all day and having access to whatever, it was just too easy. So I was just like, no, boom, I'm going to get out of this. And I had played, I mean, oh God, for years afterwards, I had played over that scenario of what happened with my boss over and over and over again in my head, just beating myself up over it. We do that shit.
Yep.
And that's part of that, cursing yourself, allowing that negativity in your life to just saturate you.
Yeah.
I've done it many times with many different things.
Yeah. And I think for me, like my point of view is that regardless of what other people, their intentions might be for you, you're not going to please anyone at all the time. And I don't even think you should. And if you are pleasing everyone all the time, that's when you kind of need to stop. But more importantly is your own negative thoughts directed towards yourself.
Oh yeah.
And that, I think, is where this idea of a kind of a curse being a negative intention, when they are self-directed, is when it is most detrimental. So, and I know, like, it has been like my lifelong thing to overcome my own negative thought spirals. Something will go bad. I will like dwell on it for days. I will think the sky is falling. And then I will become such a grumpy, moody mess. And it is, I have to kind of break my own self cursing of, what, everything's going to be fine. I am not going to develop this into a self fulfilling prophecy where everything goes wrong. I'm going to, So I think it is a very much like this mental thing, but in many ways it's so self directed.
Oh yeah. I think I think a good majority of it is self-directed when it comes to this type of thing, allowing the negativity, to, like I said, to saturate you and to bring you down. You just become a bog of it.
And and then once you have that negative energy, you can affect the other people around you, and
oh yeah,
they'll either be repelled by your negativity because they're in a positive place and they don't want that, or they'll also be negative and you kind of like have this
you feed off each other.
Additive effect of
just becomes one big ball of negative energy.
Yeah, misery.
It happens. I've seen it happen with people just reveling in their own misery. And I've done it myself. It's not a pretty thing. It's not something I recommend people do. You're not going to find people who are striving and succeeding constantly, wallowing in that shit. They're trying to lift themselves out of it.
Yep.
And that's what you need to do. You're going to second guess yourself. You're going to judge yourself. You can't help that shit. You get a brain. That brain is always on. It's always going to fucking question you. It's whether or not you can rise up above it. And make those positive changes in your life. And that's up to you. In my opinion. And am I fucking always successful at doing that? Fuck no. God, no. I fail constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. But it does, if you are caught into that negative thought spiral, it take a moment, take a breath, take a look at it, realize that that's where you're at. And, and then sometimes, these tribal things can compound it. Health matters can compound it.
Sometimes I know it sounds like fucking, it sounds cold, but fucking stop feeling sorry for yourself. That's the thing that people need to realize. It sounds cold, but stop feeling sorry for yourself. Because it doesn't do you any favors at all. Not a fucking bit. And like I said, am I fucking good? Am I perfect at doing any of this shit? No. Is Holly? Fuck no. I think she would admit that wholeheartedly. But the fact of the matter is, if you can get to those places, if you can, and if you can, mentally get yourself to those places, you'll be better off for it. Don't let those things bring you down. Don't let that negative energy curse you, quote unquote. Don't let other people's negative energy curse you.
Or even an event, like holding on to a trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And making that trauma become a big
I literally
hallmark of your identity.
And not to, and I'm not going to out anybody or anything like that, but I literally just talked to somebody about this, about a trauma that was affecting somebody that I know. It's been going on for a long time. And I was just like, dude, you gotta let that shit go. You gotta let that shit go. Would that person want you to still be holding on to that shit? No. Let that shit go. You know, it's hard for people to do. And like I said, I'm no better. I've held on to shit for a long time.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think this is kind of like hearkening to my idea of like this kind of ancestral wounding. Like if you have trauma about money and you expect that you are going to always be poor and that your family has been poor and you are holding on to that identity and that trauma of
Oh yeah,
maybe
I'm a
your
failure.
yes,
You know, I come from fucking lower stock. Yeah, if you identify that way, you're gonna keep yourself there.
you know, and it's okay to shift that perception. It's okay to understand, like, okay, I have this belief that I will always be in poverty, but maybe that doesn't have to be true. And you
Yeah,
can shift your belief system
yeah, and
and
you
then
can change it too.
make positive change for it. But and that is one of those things where I would say like a kind of an ancestral wounding becoming as a self-perceived curse.
Oh yeah, and coming from a poor family,
Mm-hmm.
hell yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, growing up poor or lower middle class, you're constantly striving for something more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and thinking, oh, I'll never be beyond this, or, you know, like I was fucking shocked when my parents got me a fucking Atari. For fuck's sake.
That was the moment of that you thought that you were hitting it big.
Let me
Was
tell
the
you,
Atari?
that was the last and only big one. I mean, really.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one. I never got the Nintendo, never got any of the other ones, just the
Mm-hmm.
fucking goddamn Atari. And I
Mm-hmm.
was shocked. I was like, "Get the fuck out."
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think another piece of this is when we start to normalize things that are actually traumatic and say, "Oh, this is the way it's always been."
Oh yeah.
And so this is the way it should be.
And I think the way we've medicated in this society is has helped that a lot. I think there's a huge over medication that goes on
Mm-hmm.
because people just want to forget about shit
Mm-hmm. Instead of really looking,
instead of dealing with it.
yeah.
You know, there are people who need medication.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not fucking Tom Cruise in this motherfucker. I'm not like, you know, you all need to just get on Scientology. No, fuck that. You do not need Scientology. But I think there's an insane amount of over medication that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's here, have a pill. Here, have a pill. I remember when I went to the doctor for after I decided to get sober, and
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to him about what I was going through. The first thing that they wanted to do was put me on Prozac.
You're right.
It
Yeah.
was the very first fucking thing they wanted to do, and I said no,
Uh-huh.
no.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's very easy to want to try to medicate and like numb out um family trauma
Yeah,
and not just say, okay, this thing happened and it was wrong and
and we
um
do have a lot of people that are running around on, you know, antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication who are just kind of like floating through the world,
mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Um and is medication really the antidote to relieving something traumatic in your family history, like an abuse situation, which can be repetitive and can be generational? Um, and how do you shift that without having to like succumb to medications?
Yeah. I think a lot of it just I think a lot of it just people need to deal with it. They need to either um have like talk it out, therapy, whatnot. You know, therapy works for some people, or
Mm-hmm.
have somebody to talk to. I
Mm-hmm.
think that exercise should be utilized more when it comes to depression and things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, anyone who is depressed, who is on medication, and who is not does not have an exercise regimen, I would question that doctor, and one who's not following it. Because you release endorphins when you exercise, and they help you deal with stress. So there's just certain things that happen when you exercise. So I would just say, like, I think that we need to look at things a little differently than the way we do. But unfortunately, and I've said this on my other show, we're a knee-jerk reaction society. We have to fix it. It has to be fixed right now. So we have to do these crazy fucking things. Well, we don't, but as a society, it's how we react, and it's what we do, and it does us no favors whatsoever.
Well, I think my perception is that we tend to be let's do the quick fix society.
Yeah.
And something will come up, and it'll be like, okay, well, we have a quick fix. But do we really do the deep work and really look back? No. Okay, we're going to send someone to talk therapy because that person had some physical abuse. But are you really, are you addressing as a society kind of the culture that allowed that to happen?
Right, that brought it all about.
And some of these,
I don't think we do.
Deeper things.
There's a lot that we could fix. There's a lot that could be fixed. But it goes into these deep philosophical questions, and these deep, like, these questions of, how much control should be had over things. And
we're right now in a consumer culture where the priority is what the next new equivalent of the Atari or whatever, the Nintendo or Game Boy, and that's more important.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Keeping up with the Joneses, because that, in a way, is a type of medication, and it's numbing, another way to numb out.
What it is it's a high.
It's a high.
It's an achievement high. I got the next big thing, and it's happened with a lot of people and with a lot of products. It happened with phones, gaming systems, televisions. I mean, look at what happened with televisions, for fuck's sake. I mean, people with humongous fucking televisions in their house now. When you and I were growing up, to see a bigger screen TV was insane.
I remember at my grandparents' house, they had a really old TV, and it was built into a piece of furniture that was like a side table.
The old cabinet TV.
It was like a cabinet.
They had some that you could get. It would come a TV, stereo, and turntable.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And
I can remember that shit.
Yeah, it was black and white TV, and that was like a nice, like a luxury item.
No, yeah. Up until I was like 7 years old, I want to say, I only had a black and white TV in the house. And then, if I went somewhere else to a friend's house or whatever, I saw color TV, but it was all black and white. And then when my parents got divorced, my grandparents had color TV. We moved in with them for a little bit. And then my mom moved in with the guy who wound up becoming my stepfather at the time, and he had cable. Now it's like, holy shit. This is a whole new world. I'm used to 3 channels in black and white and PBS. Oh yeah, I can't forget PBS.
Oh, I think we only had PBS until I was like 10 years old.
We had, of course, you always had one channel that didn't come in very well. But we had 6, 8, and 13. I can't remember which one came in like shit. I think it was 8, which was ABC. 6 was NBC, and 13 was CBS. And then, of course, you had your PBS channel. I think it was like 10 or whatever. But God Almighty, I mean, I grew up. I only had black and white. I only saw the world in black and white from when I was a baby until I was...
I know.
No,
Well,
everybody else in my family had color TV, so I saw color TV everywhere.
Right, yeah.
Just not at home.
But there are still, like, because of the limitations of poverty, there are lifestyles that are much more affluent, and I still can't even conceive of them. You know, when I went on the cruise, we had run into someone who had been on the cruise ship for 90 days. Back-to-back cruises. They could afford to do back-to-back cruises.
Wow.
They'd been on the ship from October to mid-December. And, like, to me, that kind of, like, made my brain explode that someone could have that much money that they could
That'd be
have
kind
the
of
ability,
interesting, though. Oh,
the
God,
ability to,
if I wanted to take some time to just read a book and I had the money.
right?
Why are you here? I just had a book series I wanted to get through. I fucking totally would do that, Holly.
That happened to me too. I haven't read a fiction book in like 10 years, and you know, I finally had a chance to take a vacation. I took a vacation. I was able to sit down and read, and I've remembered how enjoyable it is. And and I realized that one, having time to read is becoming a luxury.
Yeah.
To me. And two, that I also have no concept, because I am in my, like, you know, almost my curse of survival. I have no concept of how other people who can have luxury and have that time off to have experiences that are beyond my comprehension, because I'm locked in my, I gotta go to work 40, 50 hours a week. Then go home and do housework and do just to make ends meet, and that other people have other experiences, and it was a very kind of pattern shifting experience for me.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, like I said, if I had that type of money, if I had fuck you money, I so would take a fucking cruise. I'd never get off the boat. I'd literally just sit on the deck and look at the ocean and fucking read my book.
It's pretty sweet.
I mean, it's nice. I did it when I went on one before, but I didn't like my cruise when I went on it because I didn't think I had proper time to do what I wanted where I went to the destinations. Otherwise, like, being on the boat was okay. Like, being on the boat was cool. Like, the room was nice. You know, the facilities on the boat were great. Like, you could eat any fucking time you wanted. But I did like being able to go out on the deck and just read my fucking book, and it was nice. But I would totally do that. What, you been here for 2 months? Yeah, I'm just fucking trying to finish this 10-book series, you know? I mean, fuck, it's a long one. It's costing me a lot of money to finish this one. But throw some fucking money at it. Shit.
But you know, the systems in place right now do not help. You know, loans,
getting out of the rat race.
Getting out of the rat race. How do we get out of the rat race?
Fuck if I know.
You know, and
I've been trying.
They say that most of the wealth is held by 1% of the entire Earth's population.
Yeah.
So, what is going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's another debate.
That's a different show topic.
That's a different show topic, a completely different debate.
Other than me kind of alluding to the curse of poverty across.
Yeah, and you know, and do I believe that people can get themselves up out of poverty? Absolutely. I mean,
in worldwide, I am not a poor person, because there are people in other parts of the world who are like in pallet houses and they have to struggle for a meal. And this is kind of like the white privilege mentality of poverty, which is, I have to work for 40 days
and we live fucking in a place where poverty here is nothing compared to what it is in other places.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's crazy, but
but that is all back to that biblical, man will toil the earth.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty
right?
much.
Is that true? Is that true?
No,
Is that really what we should be
no,
setting up for ourselves?
well, but it's what we're gonna do. Listen, living is hard. You know, you come into the world screaming, you go out of the world screaming. I mean, that's just the way it is. Whether you can at the end scream or not, you know, but you come into this world screaming, you go out screaming. You know, it's what's in the middle. I mean, just fucking enjoy it. Do your thing. Do your fucking thing. You have, you know, as much as I like to, I've been rattling around this philosophical thought of the idea that we don't have choice because the ball started rolling fucking ages ago and we're just fucking going through the motions. But you do have choice. Like you can choose to, you know, walk up and give somebody a hug, or you can spit in their face. You always have choice at every moment of your life. And you can choose to do something good. You can choose to do something shitty. You can choose to fucking, you know, be like a fucking Buddhist and do nothing. But you know, you do have that choice. If in fact you do. I don't know. Maybe you don't, Holly. Maybe that choice is an illusion.
I think you just made a circular argument.
I think I did. And on that note, Holly, I think we should wrap this shit up. This has been Slip Into the Night, episode 18. If you'd like to see me with a fucking anime blue beard and hair, go check us out on Anchor. If those downloads hit 1,000 for 1 week, I will dye my hair and beard completely blue. I'm growing my beard until April. Well, sometime in April. If I hit 1,000 downloads in 1 week on Anchor, I will dye this fucking beard and all my hair on my head fucking blue. I'll look like a goddamn anime character. If you like this show, hit that little thumbs up button. If you don't, hit the little thumbs down button. Leave a comment, subscribe. And we will be back next week with another show topic for you.
Or maybe in 2 weeks.
Maybe
I think I may need to work next weekend, so it may be 2 weeks.
How dare you, Ollie?
I know.